language impact you in your professional life? Julie Halunga is here to tell us. Thanks for being here this morning, Julie.
Thank you, Lindsay.
So tell our audience, how do you see weak language appearing in written and spoken word in the workplace?
So I see it all the time, and I see it in written format and spoken word where people use certain words to undermine themselves, and they don't realize they're doing it, but that is the impact on their audience. So if they say to their audience, for instance, I'm not sure about this, but I think this is the way to go, they're planting that seed of doubt in their audience and demonstrating that they don't have the knowledge or they don't have the confidence in what they're presenting.
One way that I see that manifest itself in my own written word is when I email people and I say, I just wanted to ask.
Yes, that is the worst one. I just want to ask, I just want to check in, I just. And it undermines what you really want to say, which is, did you review the material I sent you?
And then I have to go back and edit my own stuff before I send an email to make sure, take out the just, or I'm sorry.
Exactly.
What are some other examples that you see people use?
Yeah, so one of the words or phrases that I hear all the time is, I think and I believe. And
guilty.
Yeah, and on the surface you think, well, that's not so bad. But if I say to you, I think we should meet on the second floor, or let's see, I'm convinced that if we meet on the second floor, we will be the first in line for tickets.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Or you could just say, we should meet on the second floor.
Exactly. So when you're speaking with clients or a boss or a customer, and you say, I think we should take this course of action, you're planting a seed of doubt in your audience. Instead, if you say, I know that by taking this course of action, we will succeed, or I'm convinced, given my experience, given my research, if we take this course of action, we will succeed, there's a difference in how they hear you.
Well, I was going to say, do you think that people notice that? Do our senior leaders hear that weak language?
Yes, but they don't hear it and think, oh, Lindsay's using weak language. Yeah. But they start to question your experience, your contributions. And oftentimes I hear people say, I don't know, there was just something about her I don't know if she really knows what she's talking about.
Right.
Because you've planted that seed. It's not a conscious, she's using weak language. Although now that we're talking about this, you will hear it all the time.
And hopefully you guys do too.
Yes.
Do you think this is something that men do as well?
Yes. So I recently did a session, online session, and it was for a women's group for a company, and there were about 200 or 300 women that were invited to this. But word got out to the organization. They ended up having 1,900 people on the webinar.
Wow.
Talking about this, and they told me afterwards it was a good mix of men and women, and the men were asking questions as well. And the men were asking questions around what I call prefacing, which is, this may be a dumb question, but, or sorry to interrupt, sorry to bother you, sort of these pre-qualifiers that we use to soften what we really want to ask or say.
Well, and just before we went live, we were talking about being your true self.
Yes.
How does that relate to using weak or strong language?
Right. So the buzz right now is be authentic and be your true self, which I don't love that language. And what I talk about is I put a twist on it and I say be strategically authentic. Be a professional, first and foremost. So be yourself in a professional manner. So you can't come in, for instance, and swear all the time because you don't know if your audience is going to buy that or if that's going to turn them off.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I know, because it does feel really good. But to be strategic in how you're showing up, meaning you're preparing, you know who your audience is, and you know what they need to hear from you. So who you're presenting to and who you want to influence it's going to be different how you speak to each of these groups, but being conscious and deliberate about your authenticity.
And regardless of which group you're speaking to, I assume you're going to say use that strong language and watch for those weak modifiers.
Exactly.
So you just presented to a group of women upstairs a couple of minutes ago. What were your takeaways there? What did you tell the audience? This is what you should know. This is what you should leave with.
Right. So we gave examples of weak language and the words to replace it with. So they did commit to eliminating certain words, and they had to write them down and then tear it up. So that was done. Those words are out of their vocabulary. And they committed to using different strong leadership language, and they committed to that this morning. And some of the tips in the conversation was about, I've been told I'm too strong, I'm too assertive, I'm too aggressive. And so we talked about how to balance those things out and not to become meek, not to go to the complete other end of the spectrum, but rather find that balance of how to engage people and yet still be strong. And one of the women was sharing that, how do you lead a team of men who want to be in your role?
Right.
And wanted that position that you were just promoted to. And the power that when you undermine yourself, the power you're giving away to everyone else. So instead we talked about what to say instead, so that you maintain that power, you maintain your role and your leadership. So when the things come up and you need them to do something right away, that you have they have your back and they're going to perform to you. And so the end was, you just got to woman up. That's what this woman said. I just got to woman up. So which was great.
And I really want to touch on that point that you made about being too strong, because I think that's something that women experience in the workplace, is that we are either seen as very meek and weak and unable to lead.
Yes.
But when we do step up and sometimes use that strong language, we are seen in a not nice word, because I'm not going to swear.
Yes.
But we
you
don't
can say
have that.
a witch with a
yes,
B.
Oh, exactly.
Yes.
So how do you make that balance where you're still strong,
right,
but you're not the person that nobody likes because you're a strong woman?
Right.
You don't need no man.
Right. Very true. So a couple of things I talk about is, think about the pace and the style of your talks. If you're coming out and saying, you got to do this and you got to do it right now, that might come across as too assertive, too aggressive. The opposite is, when you have a second, do you mind kind of doing this? And you become this meek person that kind of swallows into herself. But the balance between the two is to explain why you need this work done right now. We're meeting this deadline. This just came up. The client has requested this. I need you to do this. And give them that why and the who and the how, and then typically you've covered your bases. You're saying, so you're engaging them into why they need to do what you're asking them to do. And often I say, with people who've been giving feedback, you're too aggressive, you're too assertive, to start asking questions and engage people that way, and not ask questions that are sort of the answer to, or leading questions, but asking their opinion. How do you think this will sit with the client? Or given your experience, what do you think makes most sense?
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for these tips and for joining us this morning. And thank you guys for tuning in.